kills 30 Palestinians in Gaza. Israel has killed 30 Palestinians and injured more than 90 others in air attacks on the Gaza Strip since Tuesday. This is as of Friday the 11th. The victims include 6 children and 3 women, as well as the head of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad force and his deputy. Palestinian factions in Gaza continue to fire rockets in retaliation from the besieged coastal enclave into Israel, killing 1 person on Thursday. Amid mediation efforts by Egypt, neither side seemed ready to do the worst flare-up since August, now into its 3rd day. They said, "We are at the height of a campaign, both offensive and defensive." That's what was said by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He said that in a videotaped statement that was issued during a visit to an air base. He says, "Whoever comes to harm us, his blood is to forfeit." Unfortunately, this is not just people who are actively armed or people who are trying to combat Israel. Many of those who he is talking about happen to be children, happen to be people who have absolutely nothing to do with the conflict, because the way that the Israeli state has treated Palestinians is that just their presence, just their existence is a threat to the state of Israel. So they fire rockets very indiscriminately. They kill children, they kill women, they kill families, people who are unsuspecting without any warning. So this is something that obviously is not new. It's something that's been going on for a very long time. Yet we're kind of reaching a hit where the Palestinian state seems more and more like it's being weakened, not just being weakened internally, but also by the fact that its neighbors seem to be standing by as if they don't no longer care. At one time, believe it or not, the Arab states that seem to be aligned with Palestine in some type of way, at one time they actually tried to stand up for the Palestinians, but in this new global world order that we're in, that they've basically been silenced and they have capitulated to Western influence. And right now, Israel is being propped up as being this wondrous state. In fact, there was an article that was put out by The Economist that we're going to go through, because Israel just turned 75. And as it's just become 75, it's a glorious time for the Zionists, right? They get to celebrate the fact that this state that really probably should not have been by all accounts, but it is here, that this state now gets to exist while the Palestinian presence becomes weaker and weaker. So let's go over to that article right now. It says, at 75, Israel's amazing survival is threatened from within. This is being admitted by The Economist again. They said, as Israel marks its 75th anniversary, take a moment to admire, if you can. It has triumphed against the odds. Before it was declared independent in 1948, generals warned that it had a 55% chance of survival. Today, Israel is hugely rich, safer than it has been for most of its history, and a democratic, if you are prepared to exclude the territories it occupies. It has become overcome by wars, droughts, poverty, and few natural endowments other than human grit. It is an outlier in the Middle East, a hub of innovation, and a winner from globalization. Now, let's just insert some things. That is not the Israel state, the state of Israel. It's not standing on its own. You have something called U.S. dollars, U.S. intelligence, U.S. weapons, U.S. technology that has been funneled to Israel on a consistent basis. They're not standing on their own 2 feet on those points. But it goes on to say, yet, as we explain, Israel faces a different set of opportunities and threats in the coming decades. You can get a taste of this from the turmoil of recent weeks. A constitutional crisis over judicial independence triggered by the right-wing government of Benjamin Netanyahu, an eerie power vacuum in stagnant West Bank, and the rules of the old American-led order. And that's what we'll focus on in this video. The rules of the old American-led order being shredded as Saudi Arabia, Iran, and China cut new deals. In the 20th century, the risk of invasion threatened Israel's survival. In the 21st century, the danger is that the internal splits sap it of its strength and agility it needs to thrive. Israel's achievements are easy to take for granted, it says. After 1948, it built a liberal, gladiatorial democracy with fierce independent courts, celebrating, despite lacking a written constitution. After flirting with socialism, it embraced markets. In 1980, its GDP per person was about half of Germany's. Now it is 12% higher. It is 11 times richer than Egypt. Israel is more unicorn tech has more unicorn tech startups than the rest of the Middle East and more Nobel Prizes than China. It has navigated geopolitical shifts adeptly. After the Cold War, it absorbed 1 million Jewish migrants from the Soviet Union while maintaining its special relationship with America. Essentially, what they're pointing to is that Israel is under some type of a mystic authority, honestly, the way that they have been able to navigate the political sphere, particularly internationally. If you think about the fact that the United States, for example, what I covered in my last video, has given Israel so much money, so many tax dollars, if you're an American, have gone right to the Israeli state. And yet they don't even feel the need to listen to the United States on foreign policy points when it comes to Ukraine. They've basically decided that they want to be neutral. Despite that, you don't hear any calls from the U.S. or from the U.S. president to end a relationship with Israel. In fact, if the U.S. president was consistent and treated Israel the way they treated other places like South Africa, you would see a very different relationship playing out. Israel somehow has been able to maneuver different political alliances. It's been able to have relationships with Russia, relationships with China, relationships with all these states that seem to be at odds. And I think that their role inside of the globe is just going to increase in the years to come. Now it says the final shift is the advent of a multipolar world. It says America was the first country to recognize Israel in 1948 and has been its staunch ally. I repeat. America, in case you were confused, was the very first country to recognize Israel. That's a significant event. A more distributed global balance of power will create new opportunities for Israel, including links with its Arab neighbors and with China and India, which care little about Palestinians. Already, Israel trades more goods with Asia than America. The catch is that America still provides 66% of its arms imports and a de facto security guarantee that deters attacks, including from Iran. On Israel's present illiberal political path, public support for it in America will weaken and grow more partisan. 1 in 4 American Jews say that it is an apartheid state. So we see that there's becoming this more and more significant divide between Israel and the United States. It's only going to increase as things rev up, as far as what's going on in the war in Ukraine, as far as what's going on with these BRIC nations, which is something we're going to talk about next. So if you understand what's happening, you see an alliance that is becoming more and more weakened because, number one, a lot of people, even in America, are starting to have a problem with the fact that their tax dollars are going to the slaughter of Palestinians or to a state that is not even beholden to American interests. And then at the same time, you have more alliances growing. And that's what we're going to see happen, I really believe, in the near future. But unfortunately, for most of the world, they're still going to be silent as Israel slaughters Palestinians because we know that's what they do. And they're still going to allow this not just genocide, but this complete takeover, this land grab to occur going on in the future. And we don't know when it's going to end, honestly. I mean, when will Israel be satisfied as far as how much land they're going to seize from the Palestinians? I don't know if they ever will. So what we need to definitely do is keep our eyes on what's going on as far as with these BRIC nations, because that alliance between Israel and the BRIC nations is what's going to be very significant in where the world is going forward. Speaking of BRIC nations, I'm sure many of you have heard, someone actually put me onto it on this channel, there is a new currency that is supposedly coming out from the BRIC nations. An article I'm about to read says that de-dollarization might finally be here. So let's investigate this. Is this new currency actually going to dethrone the dollar? Is this something that you should be worried about if you have US dollars? Let's find out. Talk of de-dollarization is in the air. Last month in New Delhi, Alexander Babakov, deputy chairman of Russia's State Duma, said that Russia is now spearheading the development of a new currency, Of course, because the United States forced them into this predicament. They literally froze them as far as everywhere that their US dollars could be used. So now they're doing the smart thing, finding an alternative, which really shows the self-destructive path that America foreign policy has really just shown us. I mean, basically, you're going to force a powerful entity into a corner to the point where they have to create their own currency. And then you can't be upset because ultimately, hey, you basically put all of these requirements and put all these sanctions on this country. So it's very questionable as to why the United States chooses to do things the way that it does. But, maybe you know something I don't. Now, it is to be used for cross-border trade by the Brics nations. The Brics nations, of course, are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Weeks later in Beijing, Brazil's president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, chimed in. He said, every night, he has asked himself, and this is what everyone's probably asking himself right now, why all countries have to base their trade on a US dollar? I mean, it's a natural question. You have the United States, one singular country. Why does everyone have to base their currency on the dollar? So the article goes on to say that there are geopolitical politics among BRICS members, but they're also thorny. But a BRICS currency could represent cooperation in a well-defined area where stellar interests align. Countries like India and China may have security interests at odds with each other. And if you don't know, India and China, they're not really too good with each other, which is interesting that they're both BRICS nations. But India and China do share an interest in de-dollarizing. And we know that money, if anything, can motivate enemies to become friends. And they can cooperate on shared interests while competing on others. The BRIC would not so much snatch the crown off of the dollar's head as shrink the size of the territory of its domain. Even if the BRICS de-dollarized, much of the world would still use dollars and the global monetary order would become more multipolar than unipolar. Now, the multipolar agenda is something that has actually been foretold inside of the World Economic Forum. This has been a goal of theirs for a long time, but the way that they have put it basically is that you'll have more powers that are going to be collaborating with each other instead of having just the United States. So that's another thing that's important to understand is that this is being planned out. This idea that the dollar would be de-dollarized, this is being planned out. And it's going to be done in such a way that you might not even notice the change all at once, but it'll be gradual. Because when you see the Federal Reserve making moves to basically digitize their currency, and then you see BRICS nations making moves to create a currency that very much could be a digital currency, that shows us that there's some type of collaboration that's going on behind the scenes. Do I think the US dollar will disappear? I think it will become insignificant. And then pretty soon, I think that all currencies, honestly, will disappear for a singular currency that will be marketed as being easy and accessible. We'll be told these stories about how people could go anywhere with this singular currency and how it will work for everyone. We'll be given these beautiful scenarios, and that's the way that things basically work as far as trying to convince us as far as why we should be doing things a different way. So that's what's happening with this BRICS currency. Supposedly, it's expected to come as soon as August. We shall see if that happens. Of course, this is coming at a pivotal time because the relationships between the United States and Russia and Russian allies or countries that have said that they're not going to take a side inside of the Ukraine war is worsening. So I'm very sure that this, if anything, will cause the United States to rev up the action as far as trying to isolate Russia and trying to destroy this new union. So we will see how this plays out. One country we know who is definitely feeling the heat right now for their relationship with China and for their relationship with Russia is South Africa. So get used to a world, African people, where basically your entire politics are going to be determinative of whether your government supports Russia or whether they support China or whether they support the United States. That's going to be the new narrative. That's going to be what puts you inside of a different place versus, or puts you inside of a different category versus other countries. Right now, South Africa, who has been actually vocally supportive of Russia a number of times since the beginning of the war, is paying for their outward support and paying for their actual support as far as the relationship with Russia, probably more than other Brics members, because South Africa is the scapegoat inside of this situation. That's truly what I believe. The last thing the United States or any foreign or any of the powerful countries, the NATO countries, would want is for Africa to become under the control of the Brics nations. That is because Africa is rich. Africa is strategically necessary for the continuation of these empires. And if China and Russia were to shut the United States or other NATO countries out of their politics, then those countries would basically that would be the death blow to the West. That would be the death blow to the United States foreign policy. That would be the death blow to NATO. So we see South Africa paying the price right now. So let's read the story. Ruben Brics claimed that a Russian ship was loaded with ammunition and arms in Cape Town last December. President Cyril Ramaphosa, his office, said that it was disappointed by the claims and said that no evidence has been provided to support them. The country has maintained claims of neutrality in the invasion of Ukraine. Mr. Brics, interesting name, Mr. Brics said at a media briefing in Pretoria, and by the way, Brics is a U.S. ambassador. He said that Washington had concerns about the country's stated non-alignment stance on the conflict. Now, who is Washington? You might be asking, that your concerns about the non-alignment of an independent sovereign nation should matter. Well, we know, of course, this is how the world operates in the current world order, the Western world order, the U.S.-led world order. They feel like they can determine what other countries are going to do and that they have an opinion. And if they have an opinion, everyone must come and appease the United States. That's how they've been allowed to carry on for so long, but clearly things are changing. Now, he referred to the docking of a cargo ship in the Simonstown Naval Base between G and 8, not sure what that means. 6 and 8. So the 6th and the 8th of December last year, which he was confident uploaded weapons and ammunition as it made its way back to Russia. The presence of the ship, the Lady R, had seemed curious at the time and raised questions from some political politicians. The arming of Russia is extremely dangerous and serious, and we consider this issue to be resolved, Mr. Brics said, in a damning accusation that seems to have caught South Africa's officials off guard. It should not catch you off guard, South Africa or South African politicians, because you made the statement that you're going to stick with Putin, that you're not going to arrest him despite the fact that the ICC has charges against him, that you're willing to leave the ICC possibly if they try to force your hand inside of this. So don't let it become a surprise. This is not going to be the last accusation against South Africa. The U.S. has been critical for months about South Africa's continued cozy relationship with Russia. State Department Deputy Spokesman Vedant Patel told journalists on Thursday that the United States had previously raised concerns about the Lady R with numerous South African officials. Now, of course, the question I was asking is, how do you have so much intelligence on what's going on inside of South Africa that you even feel that you have the positioning to question what's going on inside of their port? Well, he said the United States would speak out against any country taking steps to support Russia's illegal and brutal war in Ukraine, but would not say whether there would be any repercussions for South Africa if the claims prove to be true. This proves, obviously, that the United States is at war with Russia right now. Proxy war is basically war without the formal declaration, and they're just proving themselves because you are trying to chastise another country for providing arms to another country that you're supposedly not at war with. They said Washington has also expressed concerns about South Africa's participation in military exercises with Russia and China during the anniversary of the invasion of Ukraine. So Washington has a lot to say about South Africa. Like I said, I think South Africa is being the scapegoat inside of this situation. Washington is very careful who they're going to pick with. They're careful not to pick with, for example, other Brics members like India or other countries that might be of strategic importance to them, because they see Africa as being, or South Africa specifically, as being a side of a weakened position. They're willing to pick these battles, because what's South Africa going to do? We know South Africa would almost certainly never sanction the United States, especially because they have a minority that has power, but a white minority that has power that would obviously prevent that from happening. But we're going to see more of this. That's what I would say about this story. We're going to see more coming of this, especially as time draws near to this conference that's supposed to happen in the summer, where South Africa is supposed to be hosting Russia. So we'll see how this goes. The next two stories are coming from the United States. Rasheem Carter, his fourth set of remains were discovered in the case of a man found decapitated with severed genitals in his mouth. Now, this happened while I was on break. This horrific story, this story that should make every single African based in the U.S. cringe, because you should know that your country really has not changed. It's changed as far as how they present things to you, as far as how they present the facts to you, how they present the politics to you. But it hasn't really changed as far as how safe you are and how safe you're not. In some ways, you might be feeling safer because maybe you can go to other neighborhoods, certain neighborhoods that your ancestors or your parents even couldn't go to when you were a kid. But in other ways, you will find other violence that's created by the state. So that's how the state keeps us suppressed. We might not find the same violence as far as a KKK riding around and burning churches, but certainly we'll find the same violence by the state violence being perpetrated inside of our neighborhoods, the arms that are given to people, to kids inside of our neighborhoods, the way that the state will put drugs in our neighborhoods. This is the way that they continue to control us, and that's all violence is. It's control. And this story really shows it, because Rasheem Carter, if you look at it, it seems like a story where a black man stood his ground on something, and because of that, they felt that they were losing control. And the way that they decided to exercise control, the same way they have done it historically, as far as the many, many hundreds of lynchings of African people, is to lynch this man. So just to read through some details, according to reports, Carter was a welder and was completing a contracting gig in Taylorsville, 100 miles from home. Carter's mother said the short-term job ended when he and the business owner got into an argument at the work site, which led Carter to fear for his life. Before disappearing, Carter allegedly went to Taylorsville Police Department twice about a group of white men following him in pickup trucks. The family's attorney, the best attorney, I guess, in the world, because he gets to be everyone's attorney, Benjamin Crump, wrote that Carter, who filed a police report, asked police for a ride to his hotel because he was scared, but they declined and told him that they are not a taxi service. Obviously, the thing that could definitely be the case is that the police might have even known the men who were following him. The fact that someone could say, I'm fearing for my life, and you could say, I'm not a taxi service, shows that you either really, really, really don't care, or you actually are a collaborator. But let's see. At some point, Carter allegedly texted his mother about not seeing eye to eye with the business owner, who Carter also said would be responsible if something happened to him. That's a very, very, very specific claim to make. If you're saying, hey, if something happens to me, if I disappear, if I pass away, this guy probably is the one who did it. That means this man must have said something so reprehensible, have made him feel so unsafe, that if he were to actually go forward and die, he would absolutely feel like it came from him. And that's very serious if you think about it. So he goes on to say, following the second visit to the police, Carter reportedly called his mother and told her that the phone battery was low. Carter was said to have pinned his location so a friend who lived nearby could pick him up, but he was nowhere to be found when the friend went 3 hours later. Trail camera photos apparently show Carter shirtless in the woods on the day he vanished. Detectives reportedly showed Carter's family the image a week before his body was found. The images do not show anyone other than Carter, authorities said. In addition to his head being severed from his body, family attorney Benjamin Crump alleged that the state crime lab gave the family's a box containing his head and a spinal cord. Oh my. I could not imagine. a head and a spinal cord. Carter's family also claimed that some of his front teeth were missing, suggesting an assault had occurred. Benjamin Crump said that Carter's remains were found in different locations, but the officials attributed to animals. His mother, Jones, reported that Carter's family worked with a private investigator who determined that Carter's severed, decomposing penis was found in his mouth, and his bones were broken and cut cleanly in a manner inconsistent with an animal attack. The investigator also alleged that the police bungled the investigation and failed to take Carter's disappearance seriously. What's more serious is that the police have to be covering something up. Someone doesn't die, just die from an animal when you have so much layered on top of layered, not just the threats, not just the injuries, but the relationship between the boss, everything coming together at once. Someone doesn't die like that and you get to just rub your hands clean and say, hey, we don't think it was a homicide. But the fact that they were willing to do that, the fact they weren't willing to take anything seriously makes me think that there's someone in the police department who could honestly be a part of what happened to him. So this is a horrible story, and it's a reminder that America has not changed. It's just not changed. If you think it's changed, don't be deceived. If you think that you're in a better situation there, don't be deceived. America finds new subvert ways. It evolves, finds other ways to oppress you, finds other ways to put you in your place, finds other ways to protect a system that's going to do violence to us. It just evolves. And this is a clear example of the fact that it just evolved into something where you have the police able to pretend that they don't know what happened to this man. And I really, truly believe that they do. So this is a very serious story, obviously. Definitely feel so sorry for this mother, and definitely prayers to her and Rasheem Carter's family. Definitely be safe out there, people. Wherever you are inside this world that is inflicted with violence, you have to be safe. You have to be safe. You have to stay prayed up, and you definitely have to make sure that depending on where you are armed. That's just a serious issue, I think. So let's go to the next story. Story of this segment: Governor Gavin Newsom declines to endorse reparations checks proposed by California task force. No surprises from me. I hope that you weren't taken by this deception. So let's see what happened. California Governor Gavin Newsom declined to throw his support behind cash payments of up to $1.2 million for Black residents recommended by his reparations task force. The Democratic governor told Fox News on Tuesday that reparations meant to take responsibility for the country's history of slavery and systemic racism. It is about more than just cash payments. He called the task force findings a milestone in an effort to advance justice. The insult to you all, the fact that this would be a milestone, the fact that they realize that you are owed reparations, that's a milestone in itself, not the actual payment of reparations. These are the people you guys continue to vote for, continue to ask for things from. Now, Newsom said that he's all in favor for working to reconcile the original sin of slavery. He understands that history has shaped the country, though he isn't sold on making cash payments of up to $1.2 million per Black resident. He declined to endorse any specific recommendations by the task force while still praising its work, according to the publication. He said many of the recommendations put forward by the task force are critical action items we've already been hard at work addressing. Breaking down barriers to vote, bolster the vote. That's what they care about. They don't care about anything else. They only care about your vote. Breaking down barriers to vote, bolstering resources to address hate, enacting sweeping law enforcement and justice reforms to build trust and safety, which I'm sure has to do with giving more money to the police system, strengthening economic mobility, all investing billions to root out disparities and improve equity in housing, education, healthcare, and beyond, which all of those things we should know are very abstract, and they're abstract for a reason. These are things that are not specifically aimed at you, that do not specifically benefit you, but we can say them because they sound good. Now, the 9-member committee voted in favor of several recommendations, including cutting eligible Black Californians a minimum check of $360,000. This report is not surprising. I hope you weren't surprised. I hope you didn't think California residents, you were about to get paid. The country is not going to give you reparations without you forcing them to. And frankly, the ways that you force them to are not voting. So you have to rethink about what your strategy is if reparations are your goal. Now, while that is your goal, please do be taking actions to be self-sufficient from the system. Understanding that the system has no plans to give you anything. How are you going to make sure that you as a people are able to stand on 2 feet? Because as we see, we're going to continue to be under violent oppression no matter what happens as far as who's in office, no matter how much we can vote. The reparations conversation has been derailed because there are so many opportunistic politicians who will tell you just enough for you to vote for them. They'll tell you just enough of the right things for you to look away. Just enough of the good things for you to think and hope, hey, maybe it will happen next time. So really, I really hope anyone who has their heart set on reparations sees this as a wake-up call. If anyone who's watched this channel for any amount of time knows that this has never been something that I have put focus on, and because the reason why I don't put focus on it is because I understand that reparations don't come when you don't have power, and power is not going to come whenever you're asking someone to do something for you. So please let this be a lesson. Without power, you can't get anything for your oppression today or yesterday. This fake idea that you can somehow achieve reparations by negotiating, by talking to the authorities. Understand, if they did give you anything, it would be something minimalistic, something that would still keep you in the position that you are in today as the Native Americans who have technically been given reparations, yet are still living on reservations and dealing with issues that are like housing or drug issues, so many issues that you would be surprised to know that they were given reparations in the first place. This is all they would give you. So hopefully this is a wake-up call. And for those of you who it's not, I guess you'll have to see again and deal with the same situation again before you believe that this country is not serious when it talks about reparations for you.